So just on the Pathfinders, I heard of it when I was in. Didn't really look too much into it. I think I saw it on the back of a few magazines or something like that. What is that selection process? Is it a selection process?
Yeah.
What can you explain more about that?
Yeah, sure. So it's called a Cadre as opposed to a selection. And Pathfinders, we've always had a Pathfinder unit within the Airborne Brigade. It used to be made up of the Guards originally, and then through the sort of 60s, 70s, and into the 80s, it then became each battalion would take it in turns to be a Pathfinder unit. So their patrols platoon would be a patrols or recce platoon, regular army unit guys call them. Patrols platoon would be their Pathfinder unit. And their job would be to essentially jump in ahead of the brigade and establish start lines. So start lines where battle would commence, would recce drop zone sites, would recce all kinds of things. Initially, obviously, the recce, it would be designed to land and establish the drop zones for the wider brigade and the landing sites. And then subsequent taskings would be to then mark lines of departure for commencing a battle or targets or whatever, and intelligence gathering.
Okay.
So the selection process is very much built around the airborne way of soldiering. So it's sort of heavy weights, long distances, speed marches to get there in fast time, lots of soldiering, sort of jungle tactic soldiering, understanding that you don't have a lot of ammunition, so it's very much about sort of avoiding contact, so breaking contact, peeling out of contact, getting away from there and taking minimum amount of loss and expending very minimum amount of ammunition. So the way the Cadre works is you do like a fizz phase, which is like an intro just to see how you're sort of getting on and sort of building your fitness up along with a load of navigation, and then going into micro navigation, so really using sort of short legs up in the Brecon beacons. So looking at, when I say short legs, so you're micro-naving in sort of clag into ship weather, and really going down to the detail when it comes to navigating. Then you then start looking into marches, where you then go in pairs, and then eventually go into individual marches. And these are timed very much like SAS Selection. So you'll be, and some of the routes are very similar. And then we do an endurance as well at the end of that. So we do a night march and then an endurance march, which is exactly the same as Selection's endurance march.
Okay.
It's consolidated. So while you're doing that, you're also doing range packages.
Right.
So, well, you did. So I don't know. I haven't spoken to the guys for a while now about how the Cadre works, but essentially it would be, you'd be doing training, green skills training and fizz and exercise, as well as training for the hills and everything else like that. You are absolutely fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before my Cadre, I mean, they used to tab onto the training area with all the kit before they go and even start the ranges. It was just horrendous. Yeah. And then they'd throw in a few runs here and there and everything else. It's quite cheeky on the knees and on the legs, because a lot of it's hard ground on those roads around Brecon where you're doing these speed marches. Lots of runaways, 10 milers, 8 milers, and then obviously the long stuff over the Brecon beacons with the navigation. Then it goes into the military skills phase package, which again is goes into those contact drills that I talked about, breaking contact, establishing observation posts, digging in, carrying heavy weight, and then you go into a tiny little SEER package at the end of it.
What's SEER?
Your sort of escape and evasion package.
Okay, yeah cool.
And it's an absolute beast, and I think it's often not really understood by the wider brigade and the army just how hard and hardcore that Cadre is. A lot of Green Army brigades have their own brigade recce force, which is just made of whoever's bloody available. You know, the level of soldiering is quite, well, it's quite expansive, good to, shit.
Yeah.
Where actually for the Pathfinders, you have to do a Cadre, so you're now being selected to ensure you're good enough to work with that organisation.
Yeah.
And then once you've done the Cadre, you then go to your unit, and the Pathfinders was wicked. You had your own compound, you had all the toys, you had all the guns and everything else. You didn't have to do any mess duties, you didn't have to do any guard duties. You were treated like an adult.
Nice.
And it was really cool.
And did you feel like you'd accomplished something again when you did that?
Yeah. And I think for me, the best thing that I felt accomplished was being left alone at that age now. Was I 27, 28, something like that? 28. I needed to be left alone. I needed to have responsibility, but treated like an adult. You know, for years I've been dancing to someone else's tune and being on the bus, off the bus to the latest Rupert that turns up, or the crazy OC, or the Sergeant Major that's too busy, you know, trying to get brownie points off the RSM, so he's going to fuck you around doing armory checks and all this other crap. I've done that.
Yeah.
Now I wanted me. I wanted time for me, and I think that was a new level. That was a new era in my life. You know, I then actually met my missus then through my best mate Joe. I met my missus then, and you know, I got my house, I got a dog, you know, I got all those things, got a Land Rover, got all the things that are now, I'm no longer living on the block, you know, making pizza slices with a turned over toaster, you know, or, you know what I mean? Boiling the bags in the tumble dryer because I've run out of food, money to go on the piss, because I went on the piss. It was nice. You know, we had these things, and I think that's exactly what I needed at the time.
Do you keep your rank when you go to Pathfinders?
Yes, you do.
keep
So
your rank? Cool.
for us, because I was Power Edge then, you carry over and you can stay there indefinitely as Power Edge. Some of the other guys who come across from different units or corps, they can only stay there for, let's say, 3 years.
Okay, right.
They can apply for longer, but generally they stay there for 3 years. We see a lot of guys transfer, actually. A lot of guys who go there and they don't want to go back to their units. They want to stay in the Pathfinders. And actually, one of the guys who's on the wall behind me, a guy called Lloyd Newell, he was in the Pathfinders with me. He transferred Power Edge, and then eventually went on selection as well with me. Sadly, he's passed away on a job we were on up the road here. Yeah, it was great. You know, you do some really cool things in the Pathfinders. You do your DEMS course, you do your free fall and Halo course out in San Diego. You do some really good med stuff. You do decent weapon carders. You do mobilities, stuff with cars and bikes and trucks and everything else. It's a very cool place to be. We went on tour to Afghan. There's Herrick 8, and I went on that tour. So Pathfinders had been on the tour before. In 06, when I was actually out in Alamara where we lost the lads, I actually asked if I could transfer to 3-para while I was out on that tour, just so I could get on the tour. Again, 2-para, we just missed out on all the exciting stuff. It was just the rotation. You know, sometimes careful what you wish for. And my brother-in-law was in 3-para, then he transferred Power Edge, so I wanted to be out with him, and he was there with a guy called Bri Budd, who got the VC, and a guy called Jacko, who was also killed, and they had an amazing tour. They got to soldier, you know, at the level of what we'd expect, and 3-para did amazing. 2-para, we were kind of, you know, I won't disrespect what we did, but we achieved nothing, and we lost everything. You know, we lost those 2 guys. But I wanted to be on that tour, and I think when partly coming back and going to the Pathfinders was the chance to actually, if I'm going to go on tour, I'm going to do some cool shit. So we went to Afghan in 08, and one of the most gutting things is I didn't go on tour with my section and my platoon that I'd worked really hard with when I was in 2-para. And I went on tour with the Pathfinders, and we had a cheeky tour, but we got to do amazing things. We were left alone. We did some amazing reconnaissance, and we got into some serious gunfights. It was wicked, but I was always gutted that what I trained for so many years to do was to take men into combat. I didn't get a chance to take those men that I trained into combat. I remember seeing a guy, a friend of mine, and he said, it's a shame you're not here. Would have been good if you were our corporal. And this one, would have been. He was a good lad actually.
Yeah.
There's a picture of him up on the wall, and he was right. It would have been good. We were together. We were a team, But I just wanted to do something else, and Pathfinders was probably my calling. Great tour. We were very lucky. We didn't lose anyone. We had a couple of injuries. One guy, Scotty Patterson, was blown out of his vehicle and had some serious damage to his leg, but we didn't lose anyone. We were very, very lucky.
Do you have a standout moment from that you can share? I mean, you don't have to go into detail of what it was, but a standout moment that you might be able to share? Because that's the first tour with Pathfinders, right? So
yeah, I suppose. Well, one of the great things was we were out to the east, and we were looking. They were actually talking about putting a turbine into the Kajaki Dam, and we were out east. We found this route. It was a different route. No one even looked at it. In the whole time people had been in Afghanistan, they'd never been out on this other route. It was just an old trading route that'd been there for ages, and we proved the route. And the work we did allowed us to have a safer passage for this turbine to go up. It was a complete clusterfuck. So the command for this job was given to an RLC CO, which was mental. So his job was to be overall command for the delivery of this turbine into Kajaki Dam. I don't know why they gave it to an RLC commander, because it makes no sense. He has no tactical understanding whatsoever or any knowledge of that. He divided us up into 3 packages. The first package was the Pathfinders to go and recce the route, but he wanted 24-hour separation between the Pathfinders and the engineers who came in on the second wave with the Paras. He had the Paras doing the work of doing the barn ring. The engineers were driving the engineers were overseeing it, and the RLC guys were driving the vehicles. It was just a clusterfuck. Instead of having Paras on the guns, RLC guys supporting and the engineers probably doing the barn ring. That with people who've got skill sets. They were going to these areas where the ground was dipped, so they'd have to flatten it. So this flatbed carrying the turbine could get across nice and easy, so it goes through the waddies. But obviously they were there for hours, so they'd be eating their food, finish their ball in the bags, throw it in the hole that they're filling in, and then and obviously they'd move on to the next thing. Then the third wave was actually the RLC grouping that would be carrying the turbine. Well, every time they came to a waddy, they'd have to dig up the whole waddy because there was a metal presence in the ground where people had been eating their rations. But also what was happening is because they were leaving 12 to 24-hour gaps between each patrol, the locals were coming in and placing IEDs. So they were now getting IED strikes. We end up losing, I believe, certainly one ODA guy was killed and some RLC guys were quite badly injured for essentially a turbine that is still sat on the side, not even been installed.
Jeez.
What the fuck did we achieve out there? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
However, for us as soldiers, it was an amazing thing. We got to do what we proved to do. Our command was incompetent. Our strategic planning was terrible. And sadly we lost those people, or lost one person doing something for no reason whatsoever. Also kind of highlighted some of the poor soldiering within the British military. We were, as we came back through the same route, which again you'd think would be crazy, but we did, it was littered. There was piles of rubbish everywhere. It was just white toilet paper everywhere. People were taking a shit and just anywhere. There was no. I just couldn't believe that everything you ever trained. Why are people not collecting their rubbish in bags? Why is everyone leaving their shit everywhere? Why is there white paper everywhere from going to the toilet? It shows you just how terrible the basics of soldiering really is, and how incompetent our command were. At the time. There's a couple of things that do stand out for me, but I won't share with them just because the nature of some of the individuals there. It's good stuff, but I just certain things I don't talk about.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's cool. But they certainly are good memories, and certain moulded me into to who I am and who my friends are now. So I was very lucky, Gabriel. I was lucky that I had a good run in Pathfinders, and my OC in Pathfinder, both OCs at the Pathfinders gave me dispensation to leave Pathfinders after 2 years to go on selection.
Okay.
So I'm now in my 30s, so 30 something, and the OCs were like, listen, you don't have to do the 3 years minimum before going on selection. We're going to let you, we like you. We're going to let you go on at the 2 year point. And so I applied and went on selection then, end of 2008 to 2009.
And it was third time lucky?
Yeah, well, I had my own dramas then as well. So I went on. I went into the trees, and the sear on my weapon system had gone. So these are weapon systems I use all the time in the jungle, and they're gone. So as I let my working parts go forward on the range, so I put a mag on, working parts go forward, a burst was fired, even though my change lever was on single shot. And so it looked like I basically had an ND. Luckily enough, it was proven later that I didn't, and actually all the sears had gone. But at that stage, the DS couldn't afford to have someone that they might think would be a safety risk. The OC of the training squadron and the DS, who are very good friends of mine now, always said, look, we're going to take you off selection now. Halfway through the jungle, we're going to take you off. And because we don't want to lose you. What we're going to do is we're going to let you come back on the next jungle. We're happy that you hadn't had a safety, but obviously if it comes further down the line and we've got to start grading and everything else, this could be an issue. Everything you've done so far, we're happy with. We want to keep you. Fucking amazing. So I ended up marking time for about 6 months waiting for the next course, and went back on the next course and did all right.
Okay. So where is the jungle phase for anybody that's not sure?
So the hills, so selection, I mean, you can look on this online, so I'm not giving anything away, but essentially you do a hills phase, which really is more like a screening process to make sure, it's more like a health and safety thing to make sure you're fit enough to go to the jungle. People always talk about the hills. That's because more people fail the hills than they've come off on the jungle.
Oh, okay.
Generally, if you go to the jungle, there's a high percentage you're going to pass through the jungle. I mean, roughly, when I was on there, 200 people would apply for selection, and we probably passed 10 to 15 out of those
on the
numbers.
hills,
out of the whole thing.
Of the whole
really.
thing, right.
But the hills phase, you tend to get rid of a high percentage of people. A lot of people are going on there, they're dreamers, they haven't trained properly, or, I mean, I remember years ago there was people who go on selection just to get time off work.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, it's mental. Well, because all they do is they'd have 6 weeks off because their units would let them, certainly like engineer units and signals units or whatever, or RLC. They give them 6 weeks off training. They go and train for 6 weeks, mince around the hills, and then they go on selection and come off on the 8 miler. 8 miler. It's like a standard British Army test.
It is, yeah.
Anyway, so you do the hills phase. The hills phase is very much about making sure you're fit enough, making sure you can navigate, making sure you can administrate yourself. Then you go to the jungle, and that's the difference. That's where real selection is.
Okay.
The jungle. That's where, because at any point you can come off, you can voluntary withdrawal, and this is where you're being tested to see what you're really like. It's an exercise at the end of the day. You wouldn't jack on an exercise in your own unit, so why would you jack there? Mm-hmm. I loved it. The jungle, I really enjoyed the jungle. It's actually, once you get used to it, it's actually a really enjoyable place to soldier. It's hard, but actually it's quite enjoyable environment. It's tough, but it's really enjoyable.
Had you been to the jungle before? Never been to the
jungle?
No,
but you're the basics you're being asked to do is no different to what you do in the Brecon Beacons. Mm-hmm. The difference is the fact that it's just a bit hotter and you've got to administrate yourself better.
Yeah.
But really, if you can do your basic soldiering, that's all that's being asked of you. Selection, I've mentioned this before, is selection doesn't teach you how to soldier. It assumes you were the best soldier before you went on the selection. So this is where people come unstuck, that just because you passed selection in the regiment doesn't mean you're an awesome soldier. It just means you did exactly what you were told through that period of time. Previously, the selection had always assumed you were the best of your unit before. That's why you've been allowed to go forward. And that's carried people for quite a while. So what we find is that a lot of guys, where we get more people from corps and different units, then their soldiering needs to be picked up a bit towards the end. And that's why we often go and do other courses, Green Army type courses, once we get into the regiment.
Okay.
I obviously been an ex-Pathfinder. I'd done my jumps course before. I'd done OPs, so everything was kind of easier. Or at least I had experience with it, so I didn't really have any real dramas there. I went to the CQB phase of the close quarter combat stuff, and that was tricky. There's a lot of pressure on there to make sure you know you're doing right, you're shooting right, you know your drills, the where you are in proximity to other people. There's lots going on. You know, you're now in a 360 battlefield. You know. We were doing some abseiling of one of the buildings in the training compound. It's about 55 feet, something like that. And I was abseiling. It's my third abseil, and I fell off the top of the building. I came off my figure of 8. So as I sort of came up, leant over the side of the building, my third descent, I realised my carabiner had actually popped off my figure of 8, and I wasn't actually on the rope, 55 feet up. So was that nearly 4 stories, something like that, whatever it is, I can't remember. It's 4 stories, so whatever that is in feet. And so I'm sort of leaning over. As I took up the slack, I just started falling. Now I've got my respirator on, body armour, everything on, my weapon system, and I'm just trying to scream, you know, as I'm falling off this building. I'm trying to grab the rope, which was enough just to keep my head up. To stop myself going head first as I'm falling. By the end of it, my body sort of relaxed. The whole of my body just relaxed. It sort of knew it was going to take an impact. And I landed on my right leg, putting my femur through my right leg. So my femur is now sticking out above my knee and my leg. I had a non-union fracture as well in my ankle. I was rolling around on the floor. I was just trying to get people to me, you know, trying to do something. And I sort of looked up, they just got the respirator off me, looked down, it was just globules of jelly blood, you know, where it came out of the arteries, you know. And I managed to get a tourniquet on. I got some morphine, and eventually they called in an air med to take me to Birmingham, and I had some ketamine and a few others. For me, I was lucky, as I said, ex-Pathfinder, I'd done my jumps, I'd done already done my escape and evasion phase, done all my other bits and pieces, so they were happy with my performance so far, that they said, look, we're happy to badge you. So all my sort of selection, the guys who were on my selection came and visited me in the hospital to give you my berry. And I'm now in a little cubicle trying on my berry, and it was like amazing.
Wow.
You know? And then I managed to get on some crutches to come down for the badging day parade outside the clock tower. I'm all green and, you know, like now like 70 kilos, tramadoled off my eyeballs. So I'm now joining the regiment with a broken femur, and I'm now behind my peer group again. So I'm having to wait, you know, but I was lucky. I made a really good recovery. I sort of recovered within a year to 18 months. I was back operationally fit within just over a year. I was parachuting again. I went on tour. I went and did a couple of selection tabs just for myself, just to see if I was still able to do it. I had some brilliant medics, and the regiment was amazing. The regiment association, who we support now, did so much for us. They looked after me, looked after my missus. They made sure I was housed. They made sure we had transportation. The regiment was phenomenal. But obviously I knew I'm slightly behind my peer group now. I have to pick it up. And then the rest of it was, from then on, it was just tour after tour and job after job. And like I said before, the more responsibility you have, the more you crave more responsibility.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Now, I believe when you join the SES, you change rank structure essentially, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you technically start again?
Yeah, so you've got two options. You can shadow rank, so it means you keep your regular army rank, but you then drop the perceived rank you have within the regiment. So you go to trooper and you'd be paid as a special forces trooper. But you keep the rank you are in the regular army, as long as that pay difference doesn't change. Generally it doesn't, because you pay quite well in the regiment. You would stay on that decent pay. And the idea is, some guys, certainly if you joined a bit late, you might want to keep your shadow rank so you can, because you might want to go back to the regular army, because you'll find that actually your career path's better there.
Okay, yeah.
For me, career was never really important. For me, it was always about the journey. So I was going, yeah, just sod it. Let's go back to trooper. As long as you do well, as long as you don't fuck up, and you'll get promoted every 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
And that's what happened to me. I every 2 to 3 years, I picked up, got a new rank, get paid more responsibility, you know. Up until a point, really, where I got my staff sergeant, and I realised that actually I was just being I was now at a point where personally I felt I was being posted and promoted not on merit, but because they needed to fill jobs.
Okay.
And I realised that I wasn't going to have the opportunity to have a seat at the table anymore. I needed something more. I realised that actually some guys who were taking over my old jobs, they weren't going to do as well as I did in it, or put enough passion in it, because really they were posted in and promoted because they were available. There are individuals, like anything, that, you know, your paths are mapped, you know, and people will see you through. There is a certain amount of almost like nepotism to a certain extent, where, you know, you will ensure that there's people who follow behind you because they're not going to rock the boat for you. So you do see that, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. But I think I just made the most of it. I had a great time. I did some really cool shit. And some of that stuff was mostly down to having the privilege of knowledge, of knowing that everything I do has a strategic effect on government policy. You're working at that level. You know, you're literally, I remember being on, I think it was Cameron and Obama's bloody reading list to talk about going into some country, an invasion into a country. You know, that's the level you're kind of working at, which is amazing. I mean, where could you ever get that? I remember going down to meet my parents, my missus, for a cup of coffee, and I had to shoot off for about an hour to go and move satellites, to go and look at the wake at the back of a boat going into some shithole country so I could track it. And then I came back to finish off another brew and to sit down and have a conversation with them. You know, you do these amazing things.
Yeah, yeah.
And eventually you become very, very normal. You work with some amazing people, and you do some very, very clandestine things, and it's just fucking normal. This is like, you know, it's this gangster shit. This is absolutely rock and roll. And I think you just got to enjoy it while you do it.
So how long was you there in total?
Just short of 12 years.
12 years. And I know you can't go into detail.
No.
But is there an experience you can share? Not in detail, but as an overview. Maybe one that stands out, or one that you thought, this is what I knew I could be part of. This is what I knew was the responsibility, that kind of stuff, you know, because you're always pushing for more, aren't you?
Yeah.
Is there anything you can share?
Well, I suppose I kind of said it just a second ago without going into it's quite difficult to pinpoint it, but, you know, to consolidate all of those experiences is one thing that's kind of cool. Is I remember going back with a Green Army battle group, and I was a liaison officer with a Green Army battle group, and I'd only been in a few years, couple of years maybe. And I remember going into a battle group briefing. And I was sitting there watching it, looking at the planning, and it was ridiculous, really. I met up with, I can't remember which rifles it is. There's the one that used to be the Devon and Dorsets. Nice guys. And I remember getting them all in, and I said, listen, guys, I want you to, as I was working with them, it's like the first time I've been in daylight, I only work at night normally. And I said, listen, guys, what I'd like you to do is show me your drills and skills on how you make room entry and how you do compounds. So when we go out on the ground the next few days, we can all make sure everyone's going to be safe and everyone's going to be okay. So they showed me this drill, and I don't know who made up this drill, but it was just ridiculous. Whatever they were being taught at OPTAG or whatever it is down at Hythe and Lydd, it was ridiculous. It's going to get people killed. So I said, guys, this is how we should do room drills. This is how we do room entry. This is how we do this, and this is how we're going to do the ladder men and everything else. And then I said, listen, guys, if shit goes down tomorrow in the next couple of days, you call it into me first. We don't go calling your head shed or reporting it on the net or anything else like that. Because there's a culture of you being guilty before proven innocent. We know this, where the RMPs had pushed the red card or the white card before. The white card is actually a very good bit of kit if you know how to use it properly. And obviously that's your rules of engagement card for anyone who doesn't know. I said, listen, I know full well that if you're likely to be involved in something, it's for a legitimate reason. You had your reasons for doing that. But what I want you to do is let me know first. And let's look at the situation before you start reporting to headshed, because most of your headshed have never been on an operational tour before. There was a number of headshed on that tour who were literally there to get medals. They'd been working in Abbey Woods or wherever, and they were literally, a tour came up, let's jump on the back of it. So you're now being commanded by people who've got zero operational experience, commanding young boys and girls. So brought them in, had this discussion for everyone from sergeant and below. And then we went on the battle group orders afterwards. And they turned around and they said, right, okay, this is the plan. Has anyone got any questions? SF, have you guys got any questions? I said, no, sir. If we have, we'll talk offline. I'm not going to embarrass the man or say something there. That's not what you should do. You should have the respect of knowing the audience. But the only question I was going to ask is exactly what all the sergeants and the corporals and the lance corporals were going to ask, like, what's your countervac plan? What's your, all these questions that we normally have. And it was the right thing to do, is talk offline. But what was amazing was this is where you see the difference between when you were a corporal or a sergeant in the regular army, going to these briefs, getting spoken to by General Melchett with some fucking crazy-ass plan that's going to achieve fuck all in the long run. And now I'm in a position to have change. Now I'm in a position to go, no, that's bloody stupid. But to bring it back, we went on the ground, and we were in a position where a dicker was seen, someone laying an IED. And it came over there, it said, right, there's a guy lying an IED. He's a clear, direct threat to life. You have permission to open, to engage him. At the time, we were kind of, the whole multiple I was with, we were kind of chilling out, and everyone, I was speaking to this young lad who was like a sharpshooter. I said, what's that then? He said, it's our new sharpshooter rifle, and it's been zeroed at 25 meters in the compound. I was like, so I'm having a look at this weapon system, and then it came over there, right, there he is, there's this guy, the terrorist, digging in the IED or whatever, I was like, well, I've got this rifle. So I went to go and take a pop shot. I missed him. Can you imagine, like, the one SF guy in the room full of these young soldiers, and I miss him? The whole of this unit is looking at this one me. It was like, this target was like 400 meters. He was actually walking at the time. So he's walking away at an angle 400 meters away, and I'm standing unsupported with a weapon that's over my zeroed at 25 meters. There's no fucking excuse. because it's still me with a weapon system, and I should have dropped him because I'm meant to be this SF guy. I just turned around to the lads and I was like, that's not the first guy I've ever missed. You know what I mean? It's probably not going to be the last. So I gave the weapon back, and the guy came back round the corner. This time he was on his bike with his weapon systems and everything else. The whole multiple had now engaged on him. Everyone's engaged, everyone, and he's still missing him. It was like something out, yeah. And they brought in an AH, and they missed him again with a Hellfire. The guy it must have been his lucky day, I tell you. But it doesn't matter, because that one SAS guy missed, you know. So anyway, got back to the compound the next day. Everyone was okay, so it was good. Success in my eyes. Got back to the compound, I'm having a shower in this thing. And this lad walks up and goes, "You right there, Ben? Are you washing away your shame?" And I was like, "You bastard." Fucking brilliant. Honestly, I was like, mate, oh, how embarrassing is that? But at the same time, I think if I was a bit of a dick, they wouldn't have said fuck all.
Yeah.
But the fact that he just came up with that, "You washing away your shame," I was like, what about all the crap you guys did? No, but just me. Anyway, these guys, fair play to them. You know, we have it easy. We are the bad guy's bad guy. I say that all the time. We are the bad guy's bad guy. We choose our targets. We have all the assets. We know every single thing about that target. You know, it's not like this crap we saw on Panorama about us doing all kinds of random shit. But that doesn't happen. Everything we do is we study those targets. We understand the threat picture. We understand why that person's being targeted. We know the horrible things those people do. And we don't spend that money and that time and those assets to go on shit targets. We you know, there's thought and everything else, process. So we have it easy. We have it easy. I go back to bed most mornings after being on a job all night. Get a few hours. I get good food. I can pick up a phone to my missus anytime I want. You know, I'm looked after. If I don't need to be on tour, I go home, you know. And I'm working at a level that I know the reason why I do what I do. You know, I know everything at such a strategic level. I understand why we're doing things. I see the bigger picture. And I'm able to process everything we do. I understand that I can go on this job and there's a good chance I might lose someone. I understand that I'm going to go on this job and we will, you know, the bad guys will be gone. We know this. My head is so clear because of the knowledge and the information, where these poor guys like those lads and lasses, they're shitting in white paper bags, living in fobs, drinking out crappy little water bowls. Luckily, if they get something decent. But they're having the time of their lives at the same time, you know. They're doing what they joined to do. So when we left, well, when I got picked up, I was on the HLS, the heli landing site within the compound. I said to my guys, I said, do us a favor, fill up the helo with cans of Coke and everything else and bits and kit. So as the helo was coming in, I made sure that they had something before we left. I left. I said to them, oh, listen, guys, where the helo was, it was on the 25-meter range. And I said, look, while we're here, does anyone want to just do any quick drills? And they went, do you want to work on your marksmanship principles instead, Ben? I was like, you fucking little bastards. So anyway, I got picked up. They got loads of Coke and pop and everything else like that, which is cool. And kit and equipment, you know, bucksheet stuff that we had. So the privilege... Now, this was a rifles unit. I'm an ex-paratrooper, but the privilege of being out on the ground with these guys was unbelievable. I know the drills that we taught them for those room entry and those room saved lives. I spoke to a couple of guys a little while later who used those drills, and those drills definitely saved lives. So that was probably my most proudest moment of being in UK Special Forces, is the fact that I was in a position to not only influence and support them and give them the drills and skills they need, which save lives, but also have in their back when they were confronted with, General Melchett and his fucking crazy crack smoking plans.
Yeah.
That's fucking awesome. That's why I joined. That's what made the real difference. And then finally, one of the better things as well for being in the Special Forces, that certainly with the SAS, some other units might be a bit different. Certainly with the SAS, if something happens to a British soldier, everything within Special Forces gets turned on to support that British soldier. So, for example, British soldier gets kidnapped, all our efforts and assets go onto that. A British soldier gets killed, all our efforts and assets go on to finding who did it, and to bringing them to justice was fucking epic. You know full well that we are working in the background tirelessly to deliver the head of that person who killed those soldiers, and to go back to those units with something to say, look, we've done it. We've got them. Mm-hmm. That's fucking brilliant. Forget this big strategic stuff. Forget this, we've now done this, we've done that, or, new person's in power and whatever. That's all well and good. But actually at grassroots and on the ground level of having that effect, that's fucking amazing. That's kind of what it was all about. Yeah.
Sounds like it's a very proud moment of your career.
Yeah.
But like you said, it came to an end. So what was that decision? Why did that come to an end? Was it an end of your time? Was you retiring, or was it something else?
Like I said, I've always wanted something more. I've always wanted to create. In the background, while I was still serving, I was doing a bit of procurement. I was designing kit and equipment, belt kit, stuff like that. I'm a bit of a kit pervert, I suppose, a kit pest. So I was running a business in the background. I was enjoying it. It was something different. And I started to find it more interesting, more enjoyable than what I was doing for a living. As I said, I was no longer getting into those jobs where I had those real responsibility and no longer felt valued as an individual. I realized I was part of a bigger thing, where actually now owning something like a business means that every decision I make is my decision. Every outcome is my decision. So I started off selling. I did, as I said, I started designing kit and a bit of kit and equipment. I did design some belt kit for training squadron. And then I started importing American veteran brands like Black Rifle Coffee, Zero Foxtrot, Rogue American Apparel, 30 Seconds Out, etc. And I started importing these products out of my garage on the Pads estate and then selling them online. So I did that with some success because it was really booming back in sort of 2016, 2017. We called ourselves HR4K. We wanted something that had some links to Hereford and what we did, but obviously conscious we were serving at the time, so I didn't really want to, get myself in the shit. And then work found out, and actually the regiment was actually very pro it, really. They liked the idea that people have an entrepreneurial mindset. And actually, as long as there's not a conflict of interest, then actually it's very much promoted. And they like the idea that they've got individuals who can think outside the box. A term I use a lot, which you've heard me say, is the tradesman-craftsman analogy. The tradesman analogy, if there's individuals who do as they're told, they turn up at work, they're great at giving lessons and following structure. But the regiment needs craftsmen. The regiment needs people who can work on a black economy. People who, yes, you've got cash, but you don't necessarily are very well resourced. How do you have those people who can literally go to some shithole and make shit happen? That's what they need. They need dirty, horrible, cunning people. Yeah, nearly got me. And so they need those people. And that's what I was delivering. And even if I didn't have that outlet directly in some of the work, I could still release that in what I was doing with the business. Okay. So we did that for a while, but obviously with the growth of online and everyone setting up these veteran businesses, I struggled, Gav, because essentially there are a lot of people out there pretending to be people like me. And having a veteran brand that's special forces related is very sexy. It's very appealing. We see it now. I mean, there's watch companies out there that are kind of suggesting that they're SF, or there is clothing companies and T-shirt apparel companies that are suggesting. But actually, they'd probably do better if they just promoted what they're about. There's more substance in that. There's more real. It's more true, you know. So with all this going online, and obviously we couldn't really come out with who we were, what we thought we'd do is we'd go to bricks and mortar, into this place, which is where you are now, into HR4K. You can't lie about this. This is here. It's physical. You know, you can't hide on the internet pretending you're something that you're not. And I've always said is we promote veteran brands. We promote people. It's in our interest for people to start their own businesses. It's in our interest to keep that market alive. So I want people to do it, but I want people to be original. I want people to be true to who they are. And I don't like the fact that they're essentially Walter Mittying, pretending to be something they're not, when actually if they're just true to who they are, they can be far more successful. And they've got longevity in that and everything else.
That's cool.
You know?
I just want to ask about the name. So how did you come up with that? And does it stand for anything in particular?
So this is an absolute cop-out. So obviously, so HR4 is the postcode of my old place. And the K it's an anagram of 4 kilometres an hour, which is the speed at which a candidate going on UK SAS Selection has to march over the Brecon Beacons.
Okay.
So
okay.
HR4 being the postcode for camp and the regiment, and then 4 kilometres an hour, which is the speed. So that's, the signals would do 3 kilometres an hour, and some other selections would do less, but we're synonymous for doing 4 kilometres an hour with the kit. But yeah, what we like to do now, and this is, as I said at the start, this is a networking community hub. Everything we do here is about promoting people from across different demographics. What I don't want to do is create another institution. I've left an institution. What I want to do is create a community space where people from different backgrounds, military, police, civilians, whatever, don't care, come in who have a similar ethos, which is contribution, family, etc. And they could come in and they could essentially meet new people, meet up here, potentially get people jobs, potentially open up opportunities for themselves, and good shit falls out of it. You do that and good shit happens. We have people who come in here who've owned their own banks. We have people who run little Etsy companies. It was only a couple of weeks ago we got 32 people jobs. That's
nice.
fucking amazing.
Yeah.
You know, we do support wellness here. As you know, we've got a gym across the road with Groundhammer. We create our own apparel here with a brand house with QMS London, which is again across the road. And our staff are trained in mental health, mental awareness, but that's purely from a point of being aware of individuals coming in. What we didn't want to do is create a veteran drop-in station. We wanted people to come in, use it for what it is, which is essentially escapism. Come in, meet up with your mates, come and watch a band when we got a band on. When we've got an event like Bikes, Booze, Burgers and Tattoos, you could literally ride your motorbike through the front door, park it up, grab a cup of coffee, have a game of pool. You're a fucking rock star.
Yeah.
You know, that's what this place is about. And it just gets people, but it's, you know, gets people a chance to escape from what's normal, you know, what daily life is. But also gives them somewhere that's familiar. You come in here, it's relaxed, it's chilled. There's elements in the place that you can identify with. You know, as you can see from the decor, it's very sort of music, art. You know, there's a bit of military. You know, we've got a tattoo studio. There's shit that we like.
Yeah.
You know?
And it is really cool because even the lights above the pool table, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
People can come here and look at that if they want to.
Yeah, we've got some cool things. Going back, so lights on the pool table. We've actually got one of the tables in here is the front door off the BATS building at the Battle of Murbat, where 9 SAS guys held off 300 terrorists. We've got that in here. That's cool. We've got a prop from a Sea King as a table. We've got a door from a C-130.
Yeah.
There's lots of really cool shit.
It is really cool. Just need heating when it's -2 outside. That's all. So
Yeah, it's a bit fresh, isn't it?
but that's really cool. You created this, and did that help your transition out because you left after 23 years? It was 23, wasn't it? Did it help you with that transition?
Yeah, but I think it's also a little bit of a cop-out at the same time, because I thought about this the other day. I don't know if I have really... I've been quite lucky, because the thing that we take away from the military, if we all agree, is the people we met there. Mm-hmm. Yep. Our experiences may vary, depending on what job you did or how long your career was or what you got up to. But ultimately, something we all share is those relationships that we build while we're in there. And having this place means that I'm still connected to those relationships. It's still somewhere for people to come and meet me, or I meet them. We still have the events here. We still do stuff here. Not just ex-regiment stuff, but also, Green Army stuff. We've got the Rifles who come down and do some training days here. Obviously, we've got a lot of guys who use the gym over there from the Paras, and then we have piss-ups and reunions and parties here. So, transition, I've had the softest transition you could possibly have without staying inside the wire.
Okay.
You've got guys who say they get out. They don't really get out. What they do is go work for a civvy company that's stuck in camp. You haven't really, you've got out with more freedom and a bit more money, but you're still inside the wire. Where here, I suppose I'm lucky. It's a bit of a cop-out. However, I was aware of my transition years before I left, and that's probably why I started the business. I knew I wanted something. I knew I had to have something for when I left, because I didn't really have a qualification. For what I did in the military, yes, there's managerial side and project managing, etc., that you could take away from that. But ultimately, there was nothing that I wanted to do. I'm sick of working for someone else. I wanted to dictate what I did,
Yeah, that's fair. Well, Ben, I think that does bring us up to date. Was there anything from your time in the military that we didn't get to mention? Or do you feel like you've covered everything you want to?
Yeah, I think I've covered everything.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we do have this moment in the podcast where we can get some advice from yourself.
Okay.
So the first area...
Scratching the barrel here then, eh?
It'll be fine. You'll be good. But the first bit of advice would be for people that are thinking of joining the military.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be the army, but the military as a whole. Any advice for those people?
Yeah, I think you've got to have your own reason for why you joined. I think you have to try and have what your plan is. So what are you looking to join, and what would be your exit strategy? What's your long-term goal? I think if you've got that, you've got a rough direction of travel when you get in. If you want to have a career within a certain organisation, that's great. But again, that's your plan. So I think people should have some form of loose plan or a trajectory they want to do. I think also people should realise that once you are getting in and go in, you shouldn't be dictated to by the powers that be. You should always remember that the army is fluid enough that you can make your own career decisions. Anyone who blames the army for why they fucked up is a lie. You can make your own way through. You just have to be strong enough to do that.
That's fair enough. I've got a bonus one that I'm going to ask. I've not asked this to anybody else, but have you got any advice for people that want to join, once they're in for a bit of time, want to join the SF and maybe go down that route? Any advice for those people?
Again, same. So obviously UK Special Forces is broken up into different branches. You've got obviously the SAS, the SBS, there's a B in there for a reason. You've got SSgt, and you've got SRR. And then there are a couple of other affiliates within that. I think you have to, again, decide what you want to be and why you want to join those organisations. Some people say they want to join SRR because they want to be an SF. Well, SRR doesn't really do SF. It's a surveillance reconnaissance unit that uses very bespoke skills to do what they do. If you want to be an operator, a shooter, then you want to be in the SAS or the SBS. If you enjoy green and also links within UKSF, then SSG is what you want to do. There are stepping stones, I would say. I'd certainly say don't be afraid to apply for SSG or Pathfinders before you go on selection. If you do go into selection, don't be afraid to think that actually this might not be for me. Maybe I should look at one of the other branches. So, for example, we get many people who've joined SRR but then have decided that's not for them, and actually may want to go on selection for 2-2. But I think you really have to choose what you want to do.
Okay.
And be clear that these are different units. Just because they're classed under the SF umbrella, not necessarily they do what you think they do.
Fair enough. Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah. That's really cool advice. The final bit of advice would be for people that are veterans, be that about to transition out or maybe people that have been out for a little while. Any advice for those?
You're not the first person to do it. So it's, there's a massive veteran support network out there. You've got everything from your own associations, your resettlement packages, you've got government veteran associations, you've got organisations, and even places like this. There's always a network. But what I would say is that the military is just a small part of your life. Yes, it has absolutely created the beast that you are because it's got you at your most influential point in your lives, but ultimately it's not the end all. You should think about having a whole new career, a whole new life, and get to do everything else you really want to do. I'd also say, be careful you don't become a career veteran. I think there are many people that think that when they leave that the society owes them a debt. There are a lot of people who believe that, civvies don't get me, they haven't got a clue. That's bullshit. Civvies don't owe you fuck all. The fact is they appreciate your service, but you chose to join the military. You chose to go to combat. That's why you were there. They don't owe you anything. Actually, it's important for you to transition into civistry and you to adjust to become a civilian, not civilians to adjust that you're coming into there. Does that make?
Yeah.
And I think that's the way to look at it. And if you see it from that point of view, then ultimately what you will do is transition back into society.
Yeah.
And that's what you ultimately need to do.
Yeah, that's cool advice, and you're right. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. But yeah, Ben, that has brought us up to the date. How was it for you coming on the show? I know you've done a few of these before, but how was it coming on to this show?
Yeah, it's great. Questions are nice and steady. I think you're quite good control on it because I do tend to ramble on a little bit, go down some rabbit holes. No, it's good. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. It's good questions.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing all that you have from your time in, and also some of your time. You're a busy guy, so thank you for giving up some of your time for the show. It's been really cool.
You're welcome.
And lastly, I say this to all my guests: thank you for your service.
Yeah, and thank you for yours.
No problem. Thanks very much. Cheers, Ben.
Wicked. Thank you.
This has been Military Veterans Podcast. Out.